Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, our code is this: to make all nerdy things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. My name's Mike. My pronouns are he, him.
Hi, I'm Dan. My pronouns are also he, him.
And today we're joined by Grammy Award-winning songwriter, guitarist, and vocalist Mark Tremonti, who you may know from the bands Creed, Alter Bridge, or the band that bears his last name, Tremonti. You can also find Mark along with his bandmates in the upcoming Alter Bridge Tour of Horrors coming this fall from Z2 Comics. Mark, how you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Great. Yeah, as you said before we were getting on this call, it's nice to be able to do these digital interviews this way because I think you're located in Florida, right? So
yeah, I'm in Orlando.
Yeah, we're just outside of Philly, and it would not be as easy to make this happen otherwise. So,
gotcha. Yeah. Well, good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thanks. And I want to, before we really get into things, just express a personal note. I've been a huge fan of yours for as long as I can remember, dating back to Creed. I was heartbroken when I think it was VH1 News covered the breakup, and I was so down in the dumps. And then my dad and I were in a Sam Goody, if you remember those music stores in the 2000s. Yeah. And I saw One Day Remains for sale. I'd heard about you guys coming around, but I hadn't heard anything. I hadn't seen a music video or anything. And I told my dad, I was like, can I get this album? And he's like, do you know who it is? And I was like, yeah, I don't even know what it sounds like, but I just know I'm going to like it. And so
awesome.
I got it. I heard Find the Real for the first time. And by the time that song was done, I had already had an interest in music. I had played piano, but that was the moment where I was like, I need to learn how to play guitar and I need to learn how to sing like that.
That's awesome.
Which jury's still out on whether or not I can sing like Miles Kennedy, but
well, hey, we're on this medium. I can hear you, so you just go and shoot it at me, and I'll let you know.
Maybe later. Oh man, I remember in 2007 was the first time I got to see you live with Alter Bridge. It was in Hagerstown, Maryland, and it was an outdoor show. And after the show, the stage was set up on the street. And it was on the Blackbird tour. And I remember my dad and I had somehow gotten parking that was behind where they set up the stage.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And as we were leaving, I ran into you. I had longer hair back then. I was 17, and you were just so cool to take a picture with me. And I just wanted to express a thank you because a lot of people say don't meet your heroes, but I met one of mine, and it was just awesome that you were so down to earth and cool about taking a picture, and I appreciate it a lot.
Hey, thank you so much, man. That's awesome.
Hey, no worries.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember that exact show was when Van Halen was playing the same night.
Oh, wow.
And Wolfgang, we went to their sound check that day, and I got to watch them do their sound check party, and then Wolfgang came after to catch the end of that show.
How about that? I remember
being that outdoor show there. And
yeah. And that was the one where, I don't know if you remember this, but I can't remember if he brought it out himself or if somebody threw it on the stage, but Miles was wearing a fedora, and he was joking that it was giving him blues power when he was using the slide guitar. I have pictures of that whole show from my camera, so I just remember all these little details.
Wow. I got to ask him about that
one. Yeah. All right. So I know you're no stranger to hard-hitting interviews, and we like to start with a heavy one. So Here it is. What's your favorite sandwich?
My favorite sandwich of all time would have to harken back to my early days of going to school and getting the peanut butter and jelly.
You and I are on the exact same page. So
nice.
Glad to hear that.
If you're talking about the sandwich I've probably eaten more than any other sandwich in my life, that's got to be it.
Same. What's your go-to peanut butter and your go-to jelly? Brand or chunky, creamy peanut butter, that whole thing?
I like creamy peanut butter. Nowadays, I like almond peanut butter.
Oh, okay.
Not peanut butter, almond butter.
Right.
But Yeah, healthier the better.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. You already have such a rich history of guitar solos in all the groups you've played in. But I still notice on your new album, Marching in Time, you doing a lot of things that I don't think I've ever heard you do before. How do you keep your arsenal so fresh? Has picking up the lead vocal duties in the Tremonti albums changed the way you approach writing your solos over time?
Well, the solos is just a matter of trying to get learn as much as you can at all times. There's no excuse for guitar players in this day and age not to be able to learn whatever the hell it is you want to learn, because YouTube is the best teacher ever. If I wanted to become a poet or a painter or a car mechanic, whatever the hell it is, you could do it on YouTube. So so I just learn as much as I can. I just try to tackle as much as I can every chance I get.
That's awesome. I absolutely agree. I mean, it's like you can find anything on YouTube. It's like I've learned how to repair parts of my car on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a wild resource when you use it for good.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got some really encouraging lyrics on the title track, Marching in Time, which seem especially appropriate for the current state of the world around us. I know a lot of your fans, myself included, have turned to your music and your lyrics when the going gets rough as a source of inspiration. What keeps you optimistic?
When you're like song like that, when you're speaking to your children, you want to be optimistic and you want to send good messages. And, inside, I'm definitely not the most optimistic person. I'm probably one of the, of my group of friends here when I'm at home off tour, I'm probably one of the most quiet people at the party. But, all my other friends that just have a smile on their face all the time and don't worry about anything are the ones that are going to outlive all of us. But I think my kids and my family, my home life is definitely what keeps me stable and keeps me going.
Yeah, right on. I feel that. I have a 12-year-old and he goes to his mom's on the weekends, but I mean, like when he's not here, it's like this just energy just leaves the place. Like you just feel it. And I'm sure you feel that when you're on tour, right? Because you're not getting to spend all that time. And it's real when you get it and, and you hold on to that for sure.
Yeah, it's about the most depressing thing in the world when you haven't seen your kids in a little while. So it's something that I avoid at all costs, and COVID is making it way harder. Like this, we just did a tour last month. It was a 3-week tour, and I can't have them travel to see me, and I can't travel to see them.
Right,
we have strict rules. So this is the first time ever. I usually have a rule, like I won't go 2 weeks without seeing my kids. And I just can't do that right at the moment with everything that's going on. So, and I've got a 6-month-old daughter who I've been with every day of her life, except for that 1 3-week little stretch that just killed me.
Wow. Yeah. Congratulations on that.
Well, thank you very much.
So you mentioned like a 3-week tour. Or is that kind of how you're like strategizing? Like you're kind of breaking up the tours into smaller ones than maybe you normally would do in order to be able to get back home a bit?
That one just happened to be 3 weeks. The next tour we're going to do is it's a 5-week tour that has a break in the middle of it. But
okay.
We're just going to kind of play it by ear. Some tours are getting shorter because there's certain countries you can't visit right now, and you have to kind of. And sometimes when you can't visit a certain country, it makes no sense to drive that extra 20 hours to get to the countries on the other side.
Right.
It's a moving target right now.
That makes sense. Well, speaking of, I mean, you mentioned countries, I'm thinking boundaries. But let's talk artistic boundaries. You never seem afraid to push yours. I mean, you've worked with a live orchestra with Alter Bridges live at the Royal Albert Hall. You paired your album A Dying Machine with a companion novel. Are there any other bucket list items like those that you have in your music career?
Yes, I'm actually doing my best to tackle one right now, but it's top secret, and it's definitely the most different. It could be the most exciting musical thing I've ever done. And
can I take a wild guess?
Well, I can't. I won't be able to.
It's okay. Yeah, no, you wouldn't be able to say.
I won't be able to react yes or no. Yeah, you can take a guess.
So no, I just noticed I'm trying to do my homework before we, preparing for this. And I don't know how I came across it, but I think it was like on, IMDb, like the movie database website.
Yes.
I noticed you had a music assistant credit. If it was you, unless there's somebody with your exact name, but it was a music assistant credit on the 2019 film Wonder Park. And my selfish hope is that you were going to get into movie scoring, but I'll just move right along and you don't have to respond.
Hey, you never know. You never know. But it's this thing that I'm working on. It is, I can tell you this much. I'm trying to start an organization called Take a Chance for Charity. And it's my daughter, we found out my daughter had Down syndrome when my wife was pregnant, and
oh wow,
it inspired me to do something that I didn't have the nerve to do before, and do it for charity. And it's going to get announced next spring, and I'm going to challenge other people. Once it's announced, I'm going to challenge as many people with a platform to do the same thing, and try to raise money for whatever charity they want to raise money for.
That's wonderful.
I'm really, really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for that. Absolutely. So another question in a similar vein. One of my favorite things about your music over your entire career is how I've heard you talk a lot about how you aim to always make a dynamic album. There's really no limits that way. And like for example, like balancing a song like White Knuckles and Watch Over You on one album. Like I don't know a lot of bands that would take that wide of a breadth on their album of styles. So with the heavier and like more like maybe a little bit prog influences like that are present on the Tremonti albums, do you ever find yourself also wanting to explore something like more stripped down acoustic, like maybe with Alter Bridge? Like I know I would love to hear more of just you and Miles, your vocal harmonies. I think your voices always have blended really well, and like a stripped down acoustic thing. Have you ever given?
Yeah, I mean,
thought
we've talked about doing an Alter Bridge acoustic album. We just never gotten around to it. Yeah. And I think once Miles started doing his solo stuff, and it kind of leaned more on the heavy on the acoustic side, it kind of sidetracked us from doing an acoustic album because we didn't want to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Blur the lines, but hopefully we get to do that. And I would love to do kind of a Jar of Flies type of thing with Miles, where I get to kind of sing along with him and. But who knows? It's we can really do what we put our minds to and have time to do. So whatever we're passionate about at the time, we'll be able to tackle. The next thing we're working on is getting in the studio next April and May with Alter Bridge. That will be a traditional, full bore rock record.
I'm always excited to see what you guys do next. So it's great to hear.
Can't wait.
So, following all those deep questions about music and all those types of things, I want to take it like a 180 and talk to you about pinball.
Yes.
I've heard you're somewhat of a pinball wizard. I want to ask what attracted you to the game.
When I bought my first home back in the late 90s, I went to a game room store to buy a pool table, and they just so happened to have a South Park pinball machine. And I was like, what the hell? I got some space. Let me give this a shot. And I didn't think much about pinball up until that moment. And then when I got it, I fell in love with it. It was I thought it was genius. It was just this little world under glass, and there was so much going on and so much depth to it. And if you know pinball, South Park's not a very deep machine, but people don't realize it's not just about hitting flippers and knocking balls around. There's a lot. These games that come out now have huge rule sets and tons of skill and tons of thought and tons of thought that went into these things and engineering. And to me, I'm just a huge addict. I can't own enough pinball. If I had a bigger house, it would be full from side to side with pinball machines. It sucks whenever a new pinball machine's out, like Godzilla's coming out right now. And Godzilla was designed by pretty much the world's best pinball player, and Keith Elwin, who designed it. And it looks incredible. So, of course, I bought that machine, and I'm waiting to get the delivery. But when it shows up, I got to get rid of one of my machines. That's a terrible feeling.
That's a rough one. So, as you said, I honestly have never thought about pinball until I learned this about you. And both pinball and playing music is heavily based on fingerwork, timing, and just the general feel. Like, you have to feel the machine. Yeah. Do you think that being a musician has made you a better pinball player?
I don't really consider myself a good pinball player. I'm a massive fan of pinball. When I see a really good pinball player play, you realize how bad you are at it. People, Good players are insanely good. I'm an amateur. If I get me and all my buddies together, if I get 20 friends and do a tournament, I'm probably going to be the best out of my buddies, but I'm the only one who owns pinball machines, so it's unfair.
You're like a minor league athlete. That's what you're saying.
I'm definitely in the minors, the low minor leagues. Yeah.
Now, another quick turn is that I also read you have been playing D&D in your life.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask if playing a game so heavily based on telling a story as a group has influenced your approach to being in bands and songwriting as a unit.
I think so. I think Dungeons and Dragons had more to do with my imagination than I could ever I could imagine. It was a huge part of my childhood. It was something that I still have all my. I went and rebought all the modules that I loved as a kid and all the books. And crazy. I've got a crazy D&D story for you. So I went to Paul Reed Smith's factory. And he had a painting of a dragon up on his wall. And I was like, wow, who did that? He's like, Jeff Easley. I said, Jeff Easley, the Dungeons and Dragons artist? He's like, yeah. He's like, you want it? I'll send it to Jeff and I'll have him sign it to you. So he did that. And he gave me Jeff's number. And I called Jeff. I still have that painting. But I called Jeff Easley. And if, people don't know who he is, he's one of the most famous dragon D&D artists of all time. Anyways, I call him up and he's this nice, friendly guy. And I said, hey, Jeff, you wouldn't happen to have any other stuff that you painted along the way? And he's like, yeah, I've got stacks and stacks of it. And I said, do you happen to have the player's handbook? He's like, yep, got that right here. I'm like, you have the Dungeon Master's Guide? Yep. Do you have the Monster Manual? He's like, yep, I did the Monster Manual too. And do you have the Manual of the Planes? Yep. I went down, I think I bought 15, 16 paintings from him.
That's
so
awesome.
At one time, I had the best Dungeons and Dragons art collection, I think, of anybody in the world, and I'm not lying. I had the Keep Beyond the Borderlands. I had all the original, most famous modules that people played with right out of the gate, like level 1, level 2 modules. I had the Dungeon Master's Guide, like I said, monster manuals. Had them up all over the place. And then, I don't know, 20 years later, I got an offer I couldn't refuse, and a person bought my collection. I still have the painting that Paul Reed Smith gave me, but, I had to part with it because it was just this person who had a gallery in China and bought it. And now they have the best collection in the world. Yeah.
And you got it straight from the source, so you're not lying when you said you probably did have the best collection out there.
I think I had the best D&D art collection in the world at the time. Yeah.
That's crazy.
The Paul Reed Smith factory, is that the one on Ken Island in Maryland?
Yes.
That's where I grew up. So I grew up 3 minutes from the factory.
Wow, that's a great area.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very odd now living near a city and things like that. That's how big were the paintings themselves? That was something I've always been curious about.
Some of them were, I don't know, 2.5 feet by 2 feet. Some of them were big, some of them were small. Like the Monster Manual was probably 1.5 feet tall, but these things were not painted on canvas. They were painted on board. So, he gave them to me just as these like board things with sheets over the front of them. So I got them framed, put the museum glass on them. But it was just such a rush seeing, when you're a kid and when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you're sitting there with these modules and the books in front of you, just staring at the art while you're doing your quests and whatnot. So I had those things memorized. It was heartbreaking to let them go, but.
You still got the one. Now, with Alter Bridge Tour of Horrors coming out, I did want to also mention that you are our first guest who has met Ghostface and lived. So your certificate will be in the mail in 2 to 6 weeks. But I wanted to ask you about your personal relationship with the genre of horror. Are you a fan? Is it something you're into, or is it something you've just been involved with?
No, I was definitely a big fan of horror. I grew up watching Reanimator and Day of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead and Fright Nights, and my older brother had a subscription to Fangoria magazine, so his entire bedroom was covered from wall to wall with gore and guts and everything you could imagine. So when I was 6 years old, I'm watching Alien, and when I'm 7 years old, I'm watching The Shining and everything in between, like the creepiest, anything down to stupid things like that I still love to this day. Like oh gosh, what was the movie with where he's got his twin brother on his side, turns into a basket case?
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my favorites back then. And he tried to show me the most gruesome stuff that he could.
Sounds about right.
Amityville Horrors and Suspiria, all that stuff. My brother just showered me with all that gore.
I only just saw Suspiria, I think this time last year, and I was just blown away.
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
The colors in that movie, all the cinematography is just incredible.
The Goblin soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot of great movies, and sometimes the older they are, the scarier they are.
Yeah. So I know that you're this big, huge rock star with all these accolades, but I have to know how it felt seeing yourself in a comic book.
Oh, it's awesome. Anytime something like that happens, it's such a big rush. Like I remember the first time ever hearing ourselves on the radio. It's the same kind of feeling, you know. First time you ever do your first band photo shoot. You know, first time you see yourself in the local paper or anything like that is always awesome. You know, and I love it because I can save it, put it in some keepsake area, and give it to my kids and show it to my grandkids. Those are those kind of things that they'll think is cool one day.
Now, for our big grand finale question, if you had a Rube Goldberg machine, what would it do?
It would be a bunch of guitars twisting and turning, and pinballs rolling down the fretboards and down the strings to open up this cage that housed a Dumble amplifier.
Nice.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's it.
Mark, so it was wonderful having you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great to be on the show.
Your new album is out now. The Comic Room Z2 will be out sometime this fall. Is there anything else people should be looking out for from you?
Oh, geez. Well, I wrote a book called A Dying Machine, and I'm trying to rewrite that right now, so keep an eye out for that. It's a sci-fi book. I've got a project coming out next year that's kind of top secret right now, but it's going to be announced in the spring, and it's about the most exciting musical project I've ever worked on. And I'm not playing the guitar. That's the only hint I can give.
Oh, wow.
But other than that, no, just new album out, touring as much as we can throughout the year, and I'll be writing songs for the next Alter Bridge record and playing pinball.
Well, thank you for joining us. You can find us at gatecrashers.fan and on social media at gatecrasherspod.
Gatecrashers.